So what you're saying is you should have been a sports
I
analyst, Drew.
know my Audra always says, you missed your calling in life. Do all of this work for free. No one's paying you. Like even when I used to go to jazz games, I would go during the halftime, and I don't even speak Spanish, but I would give I would give a halftime analysis of the first game, first half action in on the Spanish radio broadcast.
I was like, I can't stay for refreshments. I have to go home.
Oh, shit.
But, during some conversation and some possible talking, I was scrolling through through Wall Street, and I found this article and I thought it was so great just because of talking about trends, projections, and just how to position yourself. Your boys. I think your boys are going to help you tap to the childhood Drew. Help Drew loosen up.
Right.
And anyway, so no, I'm trying to just, I think, better utilize little snippets of time that I have to be more aware of what is out there and what we could possibly bring to the podcast.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I feel like it was good. I definitely felt a little bit more put together, and I actually agree it jives really well with what you brought. So
Welcome to another episode of the Healthy Practice, Healthy Patients podcast, where we focus on the health of your practice so you can focus on the health of your patients. Here we keep you updated on current events in the marketplace. I'm Drew.
And I'm Tanya.
All right, let's go. Let's get into it. So it's been a couple days since our last episode.
Yeah. We talked about just the forecasts
Yep.
and, how things that are looking to be a little bit delayed from what we originally thought the projections were for, a fall timeline for stabilizing of interest rates, but now it's looking like more so December, possibly 2024. So on that note, I know I left off saying that, I'd like to find prior projections or forecasts that were made to see what aligned with what actually came to pass, what ended up happening.
Right.
And, as I started to think about it, I thought immediately of 2020, COVID.
Okay, yeah.
What better example of a random event? In 2019, no one could have projected that we would have been in a global pandemic in 2020 that shut literally kind of the entire world down.
Right.
And so, just that example alone of what info looked like, I did find just to show like a chart of what GDP looked like over time. Is the two big dips that you see were recession marked periods. So, you have the 08, 09 recession and then the 2020 pullback with GDP. So we, very different context because this obviously was pandemic driven. We know this period was, tech bubble, the housing market, everything. And so, but very kind of similar patterns in the data. And so all just to kind of say, I guess that, forecasts are forecasts. There are averages of how often things kind of ebb and flow, how often things are kind of on the incline, which is, I think they say every 7 to 10 years, 7 years more so is kind of an expected timeline for growth. We're in the longest expansionary phase right now. Just kind of made me think about that we were in an extended period. No one could have pinpointed when things were going to dip or why things were going to dip. But for sure, no one would have anticipated, a global pandemic as being the cause for that dip. We're of course kind of experiencing just some ups and downs ever since then. We had the boom, the recovery. I remember specifically 2020 at the firm that I was at, and our founder and director of investments had experience in up and down markets. And so, as someone in their shoes who had this experience, their knowledge was what has come down must go back up. This pattern has repeated itself every time there's been a course correction. in the economy, specifically in the market. And so when this opportunity presented itself, it presented a buying opportunity. We were actively rebalancing portfolios to take advantage of this dip in the market because we didn't know when it was going to recover, but we knew that it would bounce back. And then it bounced back so quickly. Right. And so we've been in like a state of a little bit more of a boom and growth since then. And so I think just kind of as I thought through this, it's more so, we don't know when things happen. We know that they will happen. And it's kind of what we've talked about. It's just what can we do to kind of prepare for those times as we're living in these times of what the data is showing, right?
I like that. And it's kind of funny. It really dovetails into the article that I was reading. There was a publication put out by the McKinsey Consulting Group. They're saying 84% of global executives reported that innovation was extremely important to their growth strategy. And taking into account what you were saying about those downturns, so recently, in 2019 going to 2020, there was the pandemic, and then we saw the decrease there on your chart, and then also in 2008 with the real estate bubble bursting. Those were two instances when the market went down. But so in terms of innovation and the response in the dental field, a lot of dental offices were required to shut their doors. But what we did see is that there was some special allowance for emergent care. So dentists were able to open their doors for special extenuating circumstances. In our last episode, we discussed how this economic downturn, they foresee the rates continuing on through the end of the calendar year, 2023, December. We'll see if that holds true. Perhaps it'll be in the fall, like some project, or perhaps it'll be into next year. But in any of those scenarios, there will be a prolonged period of the increase in interest rates.
Hmm.
But
Totally. Drew, I kind of just want to piggyback off of what you've just talked about.
mhm.
You're talking about, dentists being aware of trends, being able to position themselves accordingly to course correct, just to be nimble and flexible with the changing times. There was another interesting article that kind of made me think about what you're talking about. More parents are moving in with their adult children and at younger age. So, it talks about, of course, that there are still a lot of the age group that they gave was 25 to like 31 year olds living with parents. But now they're also seeing a shift of parents downsizing and moving back in with their millennial children. So it kind of made me think about, what are the different dental trends for like amongst the different generation groups? Because as you have, multi-generational living under one roof, honestly, it made me think of my experience going to the dentist and having my emergency visit. My mom was scolding me because she was just like, you kids growing up, we were so good with your appointments and, just like how could you let this like let it go, your habits, and it kind of made me think when I read this article, it made me think of that exactly. As you're having multiple generations live under one roof, what could that possibly mean for you as a dentist who's possibly providing care to one of these family members, right? You have access maybe to more potential patients. As I was looking at the different trends amongst the different generations, sounds like our group struggles in terms of oral hygiene and habits. The generation that I'm finding tends to have I wouldn't say best, but maybe is most aware of dental hygiene or oral hygiene is the boomer generation. From a planning standpoint, working with clients that are pre-retirees or in retirement, um, those clients are so aware that as they're transitioning to retirement, they are no longer going to have benefits. They're going to be on social health care. They're going to have Medicare if they're lucky enough to have private insurance, a supplemental policy to couple what they have with Medicare. Of course, they'll have, greater access to different services, but for the most part, they're no longer having access to these benefits through a company. And so oftentimes what you see is a lot of these pre-retirees focusing on their health, getting checkups, getting dental checkups, making sure that going into retirement, they position themselves physically in a place that isn't going to impact their finances. So, just kind of thinking of that. And if you're seeing this where you're having multiple generations live under one roof, maybe some of those good habits in that boomer generation will rub off on your millennial group, right? But if you service boomer clients, then maybe you have you could tap into a possible different demographic if they're living under the same roof as their children. And so I think there's a lot, like you say, just being aware of trends that are happening and thinking of it in terms of how can I best position myself to adapt as needed and innovate, right? Tap
Right.
into different clientele. It definitely kind of made me think about what you just mentioned.
Yeah, it's interesting. 84% of the business owners recognize the importance to innovate, but only 6%
I
are
don't.
happy with their current innovation strategy for growing their business. And so I think that leaves a ton of room for growth and for opportunities to tap into. I think I remember the reason why you didn't go into your routine checkups is because you had fallen off the calendar, right?
Totally.
Because the dental
It,
practice was probably closed.
it was yeah, with COVID and then with work, with everything, right?
Mhm.
With COVID and with lifestyle adjustments that came after that. For me, I mean, kids and everyone else maintained, but me. And so,
Well, it had to happen to someone.
total, yeah. And so, yeah, I took one for
Unfortunately, it was you.
it was me, totally. But yeah, and in this article, it actually talks about some of those lifestyle dynamics with just with how complex life is getting, high cost of living, the busyness of life, just kids, activities. So many innovations are actually leading to just more complex lifestyles that the multi-generational housing situations are often trying to adapt to a lot of these different circumstances that are presenting itself, right?
Mhm.
And so it, just kind of made me think, if as a dentist, looking at who you're servicing, you are servicing a large group of like the boomer generation, that it might be worth checking, like, hey, do you have millennial children living with you? Or you might find the reverse. Are you looking to downsize to move back with your children? Because that could also be another avenue of, possibly finding other patients.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, so acquiring a new dental patient is really expensive for a practice. The cost of acquisition could range between $150 to $500.
hmm,
And so it's really important when you get a patient referral that you've already paid that cost of acquisition and that you're receiving a new patient for free.
hmm,
And so that cuts your cost down tremendously, and then it increases your profits for your margin for profit.
hmm.
So I think that's great to know that parents are moving in with their children. Usually I think of it the other way around. And so that's a great update. And good luck with your cost benefit analysis. I'm not sure if you've done the presentation already, but
Oh, I haven't even been able to.
oh shoot.
These two people that hit me up, it was so unexpected, and I've already spent time with them
Yeah.
that replaced my Hawaii conversation. So I must prepare for litigation this weekend. Time is winding down for my numbers to make sense, so I need to hurry and move on it.
Oh, shoot, I feel bad. It's getting really late now, but
Yeah, no problem. Take care, Drew.
okay.
Keep me posted.
Okay,
Good
I
luck
will.
tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. Good night time.
Bye.
Bye bye.